Joining us now is Democratic Congressman and Ranking Member of the House Budget Committee, Brendan Boyle. You've heard some of the president's comments criticizing FEMA, criticizing the Biden administration. It's been 4 months saying that water, roads, not restored yet in that very difficult area of North Carolina since the hurricane. First of all, your response. You're such an active person on budgets and appropriations.
Yeah, well, great to be with you. And first of all, his call today to actually eliminate FEMA, I don't even know what that means. Does that mean that the next time we have a disaster like the one that happened in North Carolina, that people will get no aid at all, or all the hurricanes that have afflicted Florida over the years, or now the situation with the fires in California? Let's not forget, it was 20 years ago exactly that a botched FEMA response to Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans really is what began the end of George W. Bush's second term. And that was a situation where, of course, FEMA existed, but it wasn't well run. So if Donald Trump is really talking about following through with getting rid of FEMA, it'll hurt a lot of people, and it will actually hurt him politically.
He can't do that without a vote by Congress. He can change it. He can, well, actually, if the money's appropriated, he can't line on it and veto it. That's been ruled illegal by the Supreme Court.
That's right. I mean, Congress ultimately has the power of the purse. That's in the Constitution. But this brings up a whole issue of an area called impoundments, where they now have a new OMB director, Russ Vought, who has written and talked about the idea that the Trump administration could act unilaterally and make these decisions in terms of funds that have already been appropriated by Congress. It is patently illegal. It's unconstitutional. Finally, previous Supreme Courts have actually ruled in Congress's favor that ultimately we have the power of the purse. So I think the law is quite clear, but I also don't doubt that this Trump administration is going to attempt to do these unhinged extreme things.
We've seen this response, and I know this is one area of North Carolina, but there still is obvious suffering there, Congressman.
Yeah.
Can't the government, and it was up to Joe Biden and that administration up until Monday, can't they act more expeditiously, even in some of these very difficult-to-reach areas?
Yeah, well, first, my heart breaks for that family and the others who have been afflicted. I'm not sure using them as political props for an event for Donald Trump is really going to give them the help that they need. I can tell you one of the things that really hurt the recovery effort was all of the misinformation online that actually made it difficult for FEMA to do their job. Now, there's a Republican congressman from that area who I thought was quite brave in speaking out against that misinformation.
Right, I remember.
But it absolutely was one of the things that complicated relief efforts and actually made it more difficult to get people the aid they need.
And presidents have gone to disaster areas, all the time. And, of course, George W. Bush was criticized for not going to New Orleans back in 2005 as quickly as he might have. But the presence of having the Republican National Chairman there shouted out repeatedly by the president, that is something new. Let's talk about California, because he's heading to California, a Democratic state. There's been no outreach as of a couple of hours ago to the governor, Governor Newsom, who's been a critic of the president, but not in contexts like this, in past fires. In the previous administration, previous Trump administration, he did go to California and was with Gavin Newsom.
Although we now know, thanks to people who worked in the first Trump White House, that Donald Trump was planning to withhold aid and was withholding aid from California when they went through a previous natural disaster. It was only when Trump's aides came in and showed him the vote numbers that he was getting out of Orange County and other parts of California that he finally relented and released that aid. So when we're talking about natural disasters, this is no place for politics. You shouldn't have the RNC head there. You shouldn't have the DNC head there. You should have the professionals who are working in these very difficult circumstances to deliver aid to people and help them rebuild their homes and their lives. Unfortunately, with Donald Trump, everything is about him. Even when he started talking, first thing he talked about was the fact he won North Carolina 3 times. Who cares? This should be about the thousands of people who still need help.
When he gets to California, the issue, of course, will be his criticism of the response there. He has misstated some of the issues regarding the reservoir, for instance, where he's going in the Palisades, because that is a local reservoir, not a state reservoir, but there's still local issues there because they didn't get the water they needed.
Yeah, look, these are very complex issues that, frankly, are being politicized in a way that I'd never experienced previously before. I mean, even with George W. Bush and his faults with Hurricane Katrina, he wasn't attempting to politicize that. Bill Clinton, the way he responded to those floods in the 1990s, the compassion that he showed, which really touched people. This is an opportunity when the head of state is supposed to bring comfort to people and not divide people.